Hi there, my name is Beth Williams. I'm a yoga teacher and a personal trainer, and I want to welcome you today to this restorative yoga practice. It's an opportunity for you to be able to unwind, to unravel any tension that you may have in your body, in your mind, in your heart space, and a way for us to really be able to connect to ourselves on a very deep level. I wanted to talk today about the idea of developing resiliency or strength. And I know that might seem a little counterintuitive to a restorative practice, but hear me out. So often we think that to be strong or resilient, that we need to effort, that we need to push harder, that we need to engage, if you will, in a physical way. And oftentimes we may tend to overexert. But the kind of resiliency that I'm talking about is more on an emotional, mental level. And so if we take the time to cultivate our self-care practices such as meditation, yoga, getting outdoors and breathing fresh air and absorbing the sunshine, those are ways with which we can allow our minds to be less distracted from our external world, those things that we can't really control, that can really stress us out. And so by practicing our self-care with this practice today, this restorative practice, really allowing ourselves to just be in the moment, allowing ourselves to let be and really let go of the stressful thoughts that we may tend to cling to. So I invite you to see if you can turn off your phone on your ringer now. Find a room that is quiet where you won't be distracted, and enjoy this practice. So if you have props available at home, I'd like for you to have 3 to 4 blankets. So you might want to gather those along with a couple of yoga blocks. If you don't have yoga blocks, you might look for a couple of books or maybe some pillows. And then also I like to use a bolster in the practice as well. And if you don't have a yoga bolster, you can grab a pillow from your bed. So just one more thing that I want to point out before we get started, that with a restorative yoga practice, we aren't looking to stretch the muscles. We aren't looking to feel a sensation of stretch. Rather, we're allowing ourselves to let go of efforting and to really just relax our body in a supported way. So that's why we'll be using so many props today. So when your body is supported by the floor, by the props, you're really able to let go and settle into the earth. Another thing I want to point out is that you want to make sure you're warm. So if you want to put socks on, a sweater on, grab an extra blanket to cover. I highly recommend that. And then maybe dim the lights as well, so you have less stimulus of the light shining through the eyes. I also like an eye pillow to block out the light when that's available. So let's just take some time here in a comfortable seated position. You might be cross-legged. If it's hard to bend your knees in that way, you might have your legs outwards. Okay. Sitting up on a folded blanket or a bolster so that your spine can be upright and vertical. Let your hands rest comfortably in your lap, And bring a soft close to your eyes. Now let's take this time here to really begin to feel into our body. You might notice the way that your feet make contact with the floor beneath you. You might notice the way your sit bones make contact with a cushion beneath you. Maybe noticing the way your hands feel against the thighs. Perhaps the way the air feels on your skin. And then I invite you to join your hands together at heart center in Anjali Mudra, which means to bring your heart before your heart. And we'll take in a deep breath through the nostrils, filling up the spaces of the lungs. And just exhaling out of the mouth, letting all of your air empty out. And again, inhaling through the nostrils. And exhaling out of the mouth, a soft sigh of release. And one more time like that, in through the nostrils. And out of the mouth. Giving a soft bow of your head in towards your heart, a way to connect more deeply to yourself and to commit to this practice of self-care, cultivating resiliency and ease. And we'll release the hands down now. Allow your eyes to come back to an open. So let's begin here by folding our blankets. So we'll start with a long rectangle. And from there, I'd like for you to fold that into in half lengthwise. Just make sure you get any bumps out of your blankets. That's nice and smooth. And we're going to do that with 3 of the blankets. And third one here. Okay. So I have 3 blankets here. Let me show you how to position them for your first restorative yoga posture on your mat. So you may want to move back a little bit here. So for instructional purposes, that's going to be where your head is going to be, that end of the mat. Your feet will be pointing towards this end of the mat. And the 3 blankets, what we're going to do with those is staircase them. So you can see I've placed the first blanket in the center of the mat with the fringe end towards the back end of the mat. I'll take the second blanket and stack it on top so that there's about 2 to 3 inches of space between the first edge and the second edge of the blanket. And then we'll just do that one more time, stacking that third blanket on top. And again, it's staircase, so you have about 2 to 3 inches of space. 1, 2, 3. Okay, So the first pose that we're going to do is called Surfboard Pose. It's a great way for you to, breathe into your lower belly and to expand your back lungs. So the setup looks like this. You'll begin in tabletop so that your knees are underneath the hips, the hands are underneath the shoulders, and then go ahead and lower your hips and your thighs down to your surfboard so that your hip points are just a little above that first blanket. From there, you can make a pillow with your hands by stacking one hand on top of the other and turning your head to one side. Or if you prefer, you can take your arms out, kind of making goalpost arms here, cactus arms. So finding what works for you. And just allow yourself to, once you've settled down into the support of the blankets, to shut your eyes and we'll begin to really focus in on the breath. And breathing in through the nostrils, allowing the breath to inflate the lungs, and breathing out of the nostrils. So allowing each inhale to come in when it feels natural. Letting each exhale empty out. There's no need to force the breath in any way. No need to try to control it, but rather observing the breath with your mind's eye, with your inner awareness. And you might even ask yourself, what is the breath really like? Perhaps you notice the sensation of the breath and how it feels at the nostrils. You might notice the temperature of the breath as it enters and exits the nostrils. You might notice the texture of the breath at the back of the throat. Does it feel smooth, jagged? Is the breath continuous or truncated? So as you notice the breath and really get to know your breath, see if you can keep from having that sense of criticism or judgment coming into the mind about how you think the breath should be, and simply allow it to be just as it is. you turned your head to one direction, go ahead and turn your head in the other direction. And then allow yourself to resettle, relaxing through the shoulders and the neck. If there's any other area where you're feeling obvious areas of tension, inviting your awareness there. Noticing the tension and inviting that tension to dissolve, to release. You might imagine that the area in which you're feeling tension or tightness in the muscles around the bones is getting heavier. The sense of the bones releasing and descending down into the mat or the blankets. And just as you feel a sense of settling down and releasing tension, you might imagine that the earth, the floor, the mat, the blankets are drawing upwards to meet you, so that in essence you feel a sense of being cradled and held. Taking a few more conscious breaths here in this shape. And at the bottom of this exhalation, making our way out of the surfboard posture by bringing the hands, palms down beneath the shoulders on either side of the blanket. Push with your hands to straighten your arms so you're back into tabletop position. And then from there, I'll invite you to come into a seated position. You might sit up on a blanket or a bolster. And then I'll show you the setup for the next yoga pose. So we're going to keep the same blanket that we have been using, those 3 blankets with the staircase. And we're actually going to be lying on it with our back here shortly. But I do want to grab a couple of other props here. So we have our 2 blocks. We'll also need our blanket. The blanket will be to cover yourself here shortly. So it's important for me to point out here, when you are lying down, I'll just move these props so you can see. When you're lying down on the blanket, that first front edge here of the blanket, you want that to be right at the top of your sacrum, so that the bottom of the sacrum, the majority of the sacrum, is on the actual floor. I'm also going to have my yoga blocks on either side of my legs. I'll start with my knees bent, and I'm going to put my hands back behind me to lower my body down. And just checking to see that blanket is just right in line with the top of the sacrum. I'm going to bring my blocks a little closer here, bringing the soles of the feet together, the knees are apart, and just finding a distance with those blocks, maybe closer in towards the pelvis or closer towards the knees, so that I'm not really getting a stretch here. I'm really just feeling more of a support. Okay. Now, when you lie down, you're going to grab the top blanket that's behind you with your hands here, and I'll invite you to roll it up, lift your head, bring that blanket roll underneath the neck and the head. So it creates a pillow here. Make sure that your chin is just lightly towards the chest, not compressed, so that you still feel like you can breathe freely. You'll cover yourself up. Maybe you'll just cover your abdomen here, your legs. If you're particularly cold, you can cover your entire body. And then the placement of the arms can be either elbows on the floor with the palms resting on the abdomen, the shoulders spreading out so the chest can be open. Or if you'd like, you can bring your arms outwards about 45 degrees at the body, turning the palms upwards to face the sky. And so just taking a few more moments here to settle into this shape. This is called Supta Baddha Konasana, which translates into a reclined bound angle pose. And just taking some time to acclimate into this shape. And beginning to notice once again that you are breathing. Not trying to change the breath. You're cultivating the capacity with which to strengthen your observing mind, your concentration on what is happening right here, right now, in this body, in this room. And if you notice that your mind wanders, you start thinking about thoughts of the past or worrying about the future, which is normal. When you notice that your mind has drifted off in thought, just gently and kindly bring your awareness back to the room, back to your body, back to your breath, ebbing and flowing. And it can be helpful here, once again, to notice if you are feeling tense or tight in the body. You might notice what the quality of the jaw and the facial muscles are like. If you notice that you are clenching your teeth or your hinge of your jaw, you might experiment with separating your teeth upper teeth and lower teeth so that there's space between the teeth. You might also notice that the tongue is pressing up strongly against the roof of the mouth and inviting there to be some space around the tongue and the roof of the mouth. You might visualize that there's space inside of the mouth. Feeling that spacious quality in the mouth, the palate, around the cheeks and the jaw. You might feel that spaciousness emanating around the eyes so that the muscles around your eyes begin to soften. If you notice that your eyes are moving around, or once again you've drifted off in thought, just come back to the eyes being still. Come back to the breath. We'll just take some time here in quiet now, really allowing yourself to settle into stillness. few more breaths here. And so to make your way out of this posture, inviting you to bring your hands to the outsides of your thighs to assist closing the knees. And you can place your feet onto the floor. Knees will be pointing straight up. You can move the two blocks off to the side. And you can roll to your right side from here. Just remember you're up on some height, so you're rolling off of the height. And use your bottom arm as a pillow to rest your cheek into. And you might even have the knees bent and stacked, and let the top arm and shoulder come in towards the floor. We'll take a few breaths here. Then let's place that top arm hand onto the floor, just right in front of the chest. Push yourself up. You can use both hands now to push yourself all the way up, coming into a seated position. Okay. So the next posture, you'll be using two of the blankets. So we can take the top blanket off. I'll just set that to the side for now. And you can stack those two blankets so that they are symmetrical. So no more staircasing there. And what I'd like for you to do is to turn the two blankets here so that you're forming kind of a T or a cross there with the blanket in the mat. Now you might want to use your blanket here for a pillow. I would strongly recommend that. And then the other blanket that you were using to cover yourself, you might use that to cover as we get into the pose. So I like to have either a block or a bolster at the end of the mat. And I'll show you what that's for as I get into the pose, but you might just set your props up like this. So you'll start off so that you're on your left hip, and where the blanket is here, those two stacked blankets, that's going to be a support for your left side of your waistline. So as I lower myself down here, you can see the pelvis and the top of the femur bone are on the floor. My rib cage and my waistline is supported. I'll start with my knees stacked about 90 degrees of the spine and adjust the blanket or pillow underneath the head so that the head is in line with the spine. We don't want it to be hanging down like so. Good. So as we lie here, one of the things I want to point out before we get started is you want the pelvis to be stacked. And what I mean by that is the top part of the pelvis, the hip, is stacked right on top vertically above the lower hip. So you don't want the pelvis to tip forward or back during this entire progression of the posture. The bottom leg, the left leg in this case, is going to stay bent about 90 degrees at the knee. And I'm going to take my top leg, my right leg, and place it on top of the block or the bolster that was positioned at the end of the mat. And what that does is it gives you more of a hip distance apart feature here with your leg. So this is called a Restorative Warrior One, or a fallen warrior. So I have my leg, my right leg, the heel in line with the hip, and you might stay here, or if you'd like, you could push the block or the bolster just a little bit further back from where you started, so that you can take that leg back into extension. The leg is straight, top leg is straight, bottom leg is bent. And then finally, if you'd like, you can sweep your top arm up to vertical, as if you're reaching your fingers towards the ceiling, and then past the ear. And that just gives some length here through the right side of the body, that lateral line. Some people prefer to get rid of the blanket that's under the head. Use the bottom arm as the pillow and grab that right wrist with the left hand. So here we'll pause, settling here. Breathing rhythmically, without force. And see if you can notice the spacious quality of the breath, particularly in the right side of the rib cage. Let's take a few more breaths here. And at the bottom of this exhalation, releasing that top arm, reaching the fingers towards the sky, and then you can place that right hand on the floor next to the chest. Rebend your right knee, stacking the knees. Good. And then we'll make our way up into a seated position, pushing with both hands to come up. And so we'll switch to the second side, just so that you can see. I'm going to move my props so that you'll be able to see from your angle, but you might just roll over to the other side so you're not having to move so many things. So you'll be on the right side of your greater trochanter, your pelvis. Greater trochanter is your outer upper femur bone. I have my bolster at the end of the mat, and I'm going to lie down on my right side so that the waist is supported and my pelvis is on the mat, not the blanket. Taking the right arm out to the side if you're using the pillow. Okay, if you're not using the pillow, you can use your arm as the pillow. The knees can start off stacked here, about 90-degree flexion at the knees and the hips. And then from there, you can take that left leg long into extension so that the heel is in line with the hip and the shoulders, the ear. You might also move the bolster or the block back a little bit if you want just a little bit more length through the top of the hip. And then finally sweeping that top arm up towards the sky and past the ear. And settling in here into this shape. And allowing yourself to once again observe the state and quality of the breath. You might observe any places where you are over efforting or holding tension. Sometimes we don't realize that we're holding tension, so if maybe do a quick scan and notice any areas where you're clenching or holding on too tight, and just allowing that tension in your body or your mind to go. And cultivating more ease in this moment. We'll just take another breath or two here before we transition out of this pose. And so to come out of the pose, sweeping that top arm up towards the ceiling and then place the hand down on the floor in front of the chest. You can restack the left leg on top of the right. And then with your strong hands and arms, push yourself back up into the seat. So it's time now for final relaxation, Shavasana. So we're going to make this more like a Shavasana deluxe. So using as many props as possible to get comfortable. So I would like for you to have a bolster at the back end of the mat. That's going to go underneath your knees here shortly. You're only going to need 2 of your blankets. So one of them will be underneath your head for a pillow. And the other one you're going to use to cover yourself here shortly. Now, I like to have a couple of blocks, and I use those underneath the heels. And for me and a lot of students, that just helps the low back to be able to relax when you're lying down. Some people, if they don't use props and their legs are straight, their low back can sometimes have some tension or a little bit of pain. So this just helps with that equation. So cover your feet up, cover your body up. Make sure that your backs of your knees are supported by the bolster, that your head is supported, your neck is supported by the blanket. You might have your hands, palms down on your belly, or your arms may come out away from the body about 45 degrees. And so inviting you to make any other adjustments now so that your body feels comfortable, you feel level and even from right to left. And closing down your eyes. I'll guide you through a relaxation. Listening to the sound of my voice. It's okay if you fall asleep here. So we'll begin by scanning the body with the mind's eye. You can imagine that you're tracing each part of the body that is mentioned, highlighting that particular area. And as we bring focus to each named body part, seeing if you can allow yourself to be more easeful and relaxed in that area. So we'll begin at the feet. Noticing your feet, allowing your toes to soften. Feeling the arches of the feet, the tops of the feet, and the ankles relaxing. Each breath becoming a little more relaxed in the feet. Tracing your awareness up to the calves and the shin bones. Letting go of any tension around your shins, your calves. Letting go of tension around the knees, the tops of the knees, sides of the knees, and the backs of the knees. The knees soft and relaxed. Tracing awareness up to the upper leg bones, the femurs, the muscles around your upper leg bones, softening. Tops of the thighs, backs of the thighs, inner and the outer thighs, relaxing. No effort, just ease. Allowing the muscles around the pelvis to soften, the gluteal muscles, pelvic floor, the lower belly, pelvis heavy, resting into the earth. Tracing awareness up through the torso. Perhaps your mind following the length of your spine from your tailbone all the way up to the neck and head, and feeling a sense of the muscles along the spinal column, just letting go, feeling that the spinal column can just settle a little more through the places that touch the floor, through the areas of the spine that aren't touching the floor, becoming a little more relaxed and settled. And allowing now your awareness to shift to the rib cage, feeling that your upper abdomen can soften any holding, any tension in the belly, even deep in the belly, internal organs soften. And the muscles around your rib cage relaxing. Feel a sense of being able to breathe with more spaciousness. And allowing the shoulders to relax. Your upper arms, your elbows, your lower arms, your hands, your fingers, all relaxing. The hands very soft. The fingers lightly curl in towards the palms like a sleeping baby's hands and fingers. And awareness traveling up to the neck, the throat, feeling a softness around the throat and the neck. And that softness and relaxation traveling up to the head, the scalp, the forehead. Feel the forehead is smooth. Eyebrows relax. Muscles around the eyes relax. The cheeks, the jaw, the mouth, and the tongue relax. mind, more at ease and relaxed. The whole body relaxed. Now slowly and gently bring your awareness back to your body. You might begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes. You might circle your wrists around a few times, and in each direction. You might circle your ankles around a few times in each direction. And inviting you now to bend your knees and to roll to one side. Using your bottom arm as a pillow, or you could use your blanket as a pillow for your cheek to rest onto. And then pressing into your hands to come up to a seated position. And you might grab your bolster or a blanket to sit onto. I want to thank you for joining me today for this restorative yoga practice. It's so important for us to practice self-care, especially during times of difficulty. I strongly believe that when we take the time out to find our refuge, that it creates more resiliency for us to be able to handle these difficult times. And so, Namaste from my heart to yours. Thank you.